Hi, I'm Shivan Sarna. What a treat to have the incredible Krishnan with us today. Hello, Kiran.
Hi, Shivan. Great to be
Hi.
here with you.
Great to have you and have all of you from around the world joining us. If you are vaguely familiar with me, I'll keep it real quick. My name is Shivan Sarna. I started on my health journey basically before I could even drive. My mother was really into natural healing, and I was quite healthy until I wasn't, and then had food poisoning on a trip to India as a child. I'm half Indian. And then another trip led to more food poisoning, and then worked in a moldy building for 20 years. And about 2015, 16 was really ill. And I went on a journey to get well. And I had privilege, I had money, I had insurance, I had a little time on my hands, even though I was working full time on TV. And I made an internal vow that whatever I learned, I would help other people to find their answers and basically share with them what I had learned. And that's what I've done for the past 7+ years with SIBO SOS and with chronic condition rescue. I have a wonderful summit coming up next year in February, the Science and Wisdom of Menopause. So basically, fascia, lymph, microbiome, oral microbiome, and biological dentistry, hair loss, all the stuff that was like a problem for me, I have now helped other people get better from it because of all the discoveries I've made and the connections that I've made. And it's been a big blessing. Wrote a book 11 summits later. Okay. One of the first people that I met in this journey was Krishnan. And Kiran is the co-founder of Microbiome Labs. He is a microbiologist. He is a microbiome biologist, a name I coined. And what he has today for us is about really resolving long-term gut conditions and issues. Even if you feel like you tried everything, let's get that microbiome back in shape. Let's learn from Kiran. And I'm going to have him actually share some slides that I'm going to address, and then he's going to get into the presentation. So enough for me in terms of the background. I just wanted you to know like why I'm doing this. It's because I have access and because I want to share that access and information with you. So thank you very much. And thank you, Kiran, for all your generosity.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Do you want me to start sharing the
Go for
screen?
it. Yeah,
Okay,
go for it.
awesome.
Yes, we will be sending a replay, by the way, but do try to stay with us the whole time because trust me, you're going to want to. Okay. Ooh.
And one very important thing will
Okay.
be for everyone to let us know in the chat if you can see it as full screen. Because we've done this once where the slides look very small. For me, it looks full screen.
Yeah, it looks
Shivana
good.
probably looks full screen.
We're getting affirmatives. Yeah.
Okay, and Ali looks good.
Okay. Full steam
Okay.
ahead. So our live webinar today, Heal Your Gut and Reverse Chronic Symptoms for Good. Discover why the diets, protocols, and probiotics haven't worked. And no, I will not be reading every single slide. I am reading that one. So please help to make the most of our time by going ahead and getting focused, claiming this time as your birthright to be well. Good luck on closing those other windows. Bless you. Do it. Do it. Do it. Can you survive for an hour with turning off notifications? I will be joining you. Oh, it feels so good. Okay. Get that notebook ready because it does increase your retention to even write, even if it's just a few words, but anchor it with bullet points if you can. And then those Q&As into the Q&A boxes I've already asked. So this is Kiran's updated bio. Dude, I already knew your bio, but I reread this. So I got even more impressed, which how is that possible? He's currently involved in a variety of very special, innovative companies right now. But for the last 20 years, including co-founding and leading Microbiome Labs, he has also gotten worldwide patents. He's conducted and published several research studies in scientific journals and has published chapters in reference books, holds global patents, and truly is one of the most sought after speakers in human health and the microbiome. So I don't know anyone who travels and speaks more than Krishnan to educate the educators, doctors, practitioners, researchers, and clinicians. So what you're going to be learning today is how that poor gut and microbiome health are linked into almost every form of chronic disease. even if you don't have obvious digestive symptoms, which intuitively I think we can all relate to, but like the Kiran is helping get that research tangible and then to make actionable steps. So diving into the gut and microbiome connection to hormones, autoimmune, chronic pain. See, I didn't usually make that connection. Metabolic syndrome, mood, neurodegenerative issues, impaired detox capacity. It's not just about methylation, skin conditions, which I know he and I are both super passionate about, and so many more things. And why do restrictive diets actually harm more than help long term? Those harsh killing protocols need to be used, if at all, very specifically. Do you have a supplement graveyard? Unfortunately, that is a term that is now like super popular because a lot of times we don't get results, or we quit, or we can't remember why I'm taking this supplement, and then the compliance fades, and why sometimes they can even do more harm than good. You really need guidance, right? Find the real root causes of your poor gut and microbiome health, and how the 5 pillars of building a resilient gut and microbiome can lead to long-term health and vitality. And we have, drumroll please, the biggest announcement ever from Kiran, and a huge bonus if you're interested. So you do want to stick around to the end. This is actually something extremely exciting that no one's ever, like, I didn't even think this was going to happen because it was beyond my wildest dream of hope, and it has happened. So I'm super excited, as you can imagine. Kiran, here's pictures of people on the toilet. Come on now.
Yeah, well, so, and thank you so much, Shivan. Thank you so much for hosting me, as you always do, very kindly. And for everybody that's here, I see people from South Africa and Canada and Europe and all over the place, of course, in the US as well, from all corners of the US. So thank you all for being here. I think that signifies one really important thing, that we have such a varied group of people within the audience, is that I think everybody can relate to the issue of having lots of chronic issues, right? Having a variety of chronic issues, things that may not be easily dealt with from the traditional medical approach, and things that may get worse and progress in a negative way over time, and the lack of answers that you may have from your traditional medical routes. And so, when you look at the kind of struggles that people have, and I've had the privilege of working with lots of practitioners, working directly with individuals over the last decade or more, and you start to see that there's significant patterns that evolve. And those patterns are one of the things that I want to try to break for people. Because the patterns in understanding disease process, and then the patterns in trying to figure out how to intervene in the disease process, sometimes works with certain conditions, but often with a lot of chronic conditions, it can actually be a negative approach. And I'll explain what I'm talking about, right? So I'll give you a lot of information in this particular talk. So if you're taking notes and all that, please feel free to. And then, of course, you can watch the recording again afterwards if you miss anything and you want to go back and re-listen to it. But there's really 3 main themes and ideas that I would love for you to pick up and harness, and I'll reinforce them as we go along. Number 1 is that the vast majority of chronic diseases have the microbiome playing a role in the pathology of the disease, right? Whether it's a direct driver of the condition, or at the least, a dysfunctional microbiome is preventing you from improving that condition, right? So the microbiome has to be addressed. That's theme number 1, right? So keep that in mind. Number 2 is, when it comes to the microbiome, we can't think of it interventionally. What I mean by that is, a lot of medicine, even in holistic health, is practiced with this interventional mindset, meaning there is a pathway that's dysfunctional, or there's a molecule that we don't want to make, or there's a molecule that we want to enhance. And so you use tools to intervene in those pathologies, right? So you use a tool to block this pathway, or you use a tool to enhance this pathway, or you use a tool to block this compound or neutralize it, or enhance a compound and neutralize it. That's an interventional approach to health and disease pathology. And that can work in many disease pathologies and many tools. But when it comes to having a healthy, resilient microbiome, which then influences lots of disease pathologies, we can't use interventional medicine. We have to be influential to the microbiome, right? What does that mean? Well, it's because the microbiome is a very complex ecosystem. There aren't just one or two things that one has to do in order to improve the microbiome. There aren't just one or two pathways. There aren't even just a dozen pathways. There's literally thousands upon thousands of pathways, thousands upon thousands of genes, trillions of organisms. It's a very complex system, which means we can't intervene with singular things. And we can't just pile on a bunch of singular things based on symptomology, right? What we have to do is do a collection of things that influence the ecosystem in the right direction, right? So we have to stop thinking about the microbiome from an interventional perspective. We have to think about it from what are all the things we can do to influence the microbiome in the right way, right? And then the third thing that we want to keep in mind here is that the things that we do to influence the microbiome are choices that you'll make every single day. Even though the choices don't seem to be directly related to the condition you're dealing with, there are lots and lots of choices you make throughout the day and every day that influences your microbiome either in a negative way or a positive way. And that's the kind of knowledge I want to impart on you so that you're not always asking questions like, is this good for my microbiome? Is that good for my microbiome? Is that bad for my microbiome? Can I use this? Can I use that? Right? Like all of those questions that you have in your mind all the time, we want those to be more reflexive for you. And we want it to be more natural, that you start to understand how your microbiome is influenced by things and what are the choices you should be making each day, right? So the three themes are, number one, that the microbiome is playing a role in virtually every disease pathology you may be dealing with, whether it's a direct effect or it's a secondary effect or it's preventing you from getting better from that condition. Number two, when we think about the microbiome, we shouldn't think of it interventionally, meaning that this is the one compound we want to take for this and that compound for that and this compound for this. We want to think about it as a collective set of behaviors and choices to influence the microbiome into the right resilient stature, right? I hope those things make sense. So jumping into the slides here.
It does. I just want to just do one other thing, Kiran, because I know you're going to get into the slides. You want, just to recap this thought pattern, which is a thing that really helped me. I want to take my learning and turn it into thinking. Yeah. Because that's the educational base that I have that then informs my future decisions. I'm going to hide myself. You're getting into slides. Thank God we're getting off the toilet one. Thank you.
Mr. I mean, I think everybody has felt like one of these pictures, either all the time or at some point in their life. And we often think about microbiome issues as primary gut issues, right? But we know that it's beyond painful digestion and reflux, beyond the uncomfortable bloating, embarrassing gas, constipation. These are the things that often people associate with microbiome disruptions. But you can have a disrupted microbiome in one way or the other without having a lot of these symptoms. Now, if you have these types of symptoms, it does indicate that you have a dysfunctional microbiome, but you don't have to have these symptoms. And you could still have a leaky gut, a dysfunctional microbiome, high pathobionts, and so on, right? But poor gut can actually look like all of these conditions, right? We know that a dysfunctional gut microbiome impacts immune system quite a bit, from immune dysregulations like autoimmunity to allergies, asthma, and so on. Chronic pain and inflammation. Shivan mentioned that briefly earlier, and of course, chronic low-grade inflammation, which is one of the key foundations to chronic disease. The biggest source of chronic low-grade inflammation, arguably, is a dysfunctional microbiome. That has been shown in a couple meta-analysis papers. Weight gain metabolic syndrome, the large number of the population suffering from metabolic health issues. Of course, we know that Ozempic and GLP-1 agonists, peptides and all that are so popular now. Why is that? Well, because we have such a huge population that's struggling with metabolic issues and struggling to find solutions, right? So the microbiome plays an important role there. Impaired detoxification. We know we live in a very toxigenic environment, and it's hard to get away from the toxicity in our environment between the food source, that we have to consume that's laced with pesticides, herbicides, antimicrobials, preservatives, and all that, to things like microplastics and other environmental toxins, toxicants, and of course, hormone disruptors and endocrine disruptors and mimics and all of these things that are in fragrances and our personal care products. All of those things provide a degree of toxicity for your body and for your system. And keep in mind that these are all compounds that we did not evolve with. So our bodies are still trying to figure out how to deal with these things. And more often than not, the first lines of defense against new things that are introduced to our environment are the microbes, because microbes evolve much, much faster than our cells can, right? Our cells clearly over the last couple million years have evolved to deal with different things in different manners, but the microbes within a matter of months or few years can evolve to dealing with new issues, right? So, for example, they've identified microbes in the soil that now can break down glyphosate, right? That mechanism probably never existed in the microbe until glyphosate started being used so widely. But microbes are so good at adapting to environments that now there's a microbe that's figured out how to break down glyphosate. There are microbes that we had identified that breaks down microplastics, right? So that's not a natural capability. That's one that's forced upon the microbe because of environmental stressors. So microbes in our system will help us detoxify from all of these unique foreign things that we're exposed to, but we have to have a healthy microbiome. Now, one of the effects of the microbes reducing the toxicity on our system is that it helps protect the liver, right? Because our primary detox mechanism outside of our microbiome is our liver, right? 80% of the things you swallow and you consume will end up going through the liver, and your liver has to deal with it. We're seeing this massive issue of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease nowadays because the liver is undergoing a tremendous amount of toxicity. It used to be that cirrhosis of the liver was primarily driven by hepatitis and or alcoholism. Now, the number one cause of liver cirrhosis and end-stage liver failure is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's a new disease that's been created in the last few decades, right? It did not exist several decades ago. Now we know that non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is a new thing because you no longer have to be an alcoholic to undergo cirrhosis. Acne and other skin issues. I've talked a lot about the skin microbiome in the recent year, but that's certainly an area that is really important because people are continuously doing things to try to improve the appearance of the skin and just cosmetically and so on. But your skin is heavily influenced by your microbiome, not only your gut microbiome, but of course your skin microbiome as well. Hypersensitivities, things like mast cell activation, histamine intolerance, those are all things that are heavily influenced by what your microbiome looks like. Through the gut-brain axis, mood, anxiety disorders, depression, and then long-term neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cognitive decline, dementia, those are all very much related to your microbiome. Chronic infections, people who get sick all the time, people who have chronic latent infections, whether it's C. diff as a bacterial infection, Klebsiella, pneumonia, or viral infections, things like Epstein-Barr, cytomegalovirus that people picked up a long time ago that still remain in their system and affect them from time to time. A lot of those things are an effect of having a non-resilient microbiome. Blood sugar dysregulation. In fact, even the American Diabetic Association, which is normally decades behind on some of the most advanced research, they've published showing that a dysfunctional microbiome and leaky gut is the primary insult that starts the process of type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes is arguably one of the biggest health epidemics that's going to hit the globe or is already hitting the globe over the next few decades, right? And the reason I say this is because when people develop type 2 diabetes, their risk for all of the chronic diseases go up quite dramatically, right? It doubles the risk for heart disease. It almost triples or quadruples the risk of dementia, Alzheimer's, other long-term neurological dysfunctions. It dramatically increases the risk for osteoporosis and hip fractures. And then, of course, death and mortality increases quite dramatically when you have diabetes. And right now on the globe today, we have four times more pre-diabetics than we have diabetics, right? So imagine over the next 15 to 20 years, most of those pre-diabetics are going to become diabetic. We'll have almost 4 billion people on Earth that could be diabetic, right? That's a massive hit to the costs of healthcare and healthcare management for these individuals. And people will be living longer because we can band-aid a lot of these conditions for a while, but the quality of life will be really poor. And all the while, this risk of diabetes and metabolic syndrome that goes along with it is heavily influenced by your microbiome and leaky gut. Hormone imbalances, we've been talking a lot about that, and I'll share a little bit about that as we go along. Chronic fatigue, low energy, nutrient deficiencies, brain fog, and so on, right? So the list goes on and on. And what we'll do here over the next few slides is I'll talk through some of these mechanisms to give you some idea of how these things are influenced by the microbiome. But then we'll talk also about what is affecting the microbiome, and then how do we think about the strategy of improving the microbiome, right? And doing the thing I mentioned earlier, which is influencing the microbiome towards resilience, towards health, towards healthiness, rather than thinking about an interventional approach to the microbiome. So leaky gut and endotoxemia. This is one thing I've talked about quite a bit. And what's really important to remember here is that the structures of your intestinal lining are heavily influenced by the microbes that govern how those structures function, right? So remember, you have a mucus layer on your intestinal epithelium, which is made up of two distinct structures, mucin 1 and mucin 2. The inner part, that mucin 2, which is depicted here by that darker blue color rather than the really light baby blue color, is the final barrier before things hit the intestinal lining, right? And the lining is made up of one cell thick barrier of intestinal cells that we call intestinal epithelial cells. And these are very interesting, varied cells. There's hormonal cells, there's immune cells, there's just barrier cells. It's a big mix of cells within that single layer structure, but it's largely protected by this mucus layer. The mucin 2 layer, which then is typically devoid of microbes, and then the mucin 1 layer, which is where most of the microbiome lives in your body. Now, the reason it's structured this way is so that everything that is introduced into your body through food and diet and drinking things and breathing things in and so on, first encounters the microbiome in that top mucin 1 layer. The microbiome helps identify which of these things is a problem and which isn't. Right. And then the mucin that these things are entering into slows down the transit time between when those things enter the lining of the gut to when they get to the intestinal epithelium. That slowing down of the transit time allows your immune system and the microbiome and so on to deal with compounds in the most appropriate way. Where things should be tolerated, it should be allowed to pass through in between the intestinal epithelium or through the intestinal epithelium, things like nutrients, amino acids, vitamins, all of these important things that we need to get through the system. But toxins and microbes and viruses and all of that shouldn't be passing through, there's time to neutralize them and sequester them in the mucin layer, right? So that mucin layer is incredibly important, and there's a very specific reason why the top part of the mucin layer is where most of the microbes live, and the inner part of the mucin layer is almost devoid of microbes. This is a very deliberate thing. Now, one of the reasons this is deliberate is because the inner part of the mucin layer kind of acts as a demilitarized zone, if you will. All the immune cells that are embedded within your intestinal epithelium are constantly monitoring what's happening with the trillions of microbes just above it. If those microbes come too close to the intestinal epithelium, the immune cells freak out that you might be undergoing sepsis. There may be a huge influx of microbes coming in. So it recruits a lot of immune cells to that region. And it causes a lot of inflammatory damage because it's trying to protect the host from sepsis. So this space where there's no microbes, is devoid of microbes, is really important. When that space becomes compromised, as you see on the leaky gut side, on the right-hand side, you get a movement of the mucin one layer translocating too close to the intestinal epithelium, freaking out the immune cells within the intestinal epithelium, causing them to recruit inflammatory, pro-inflammatory, innate immune players to the region, and then everything undergoes an inflammatory response and inflammatory damage, which can then damage the actual intestinal epithelial cells themselves, leaving large gaps in that barrier, right? So it's a process that starts and perpetuates when you have leaky gut, but it starts with dysbiosis. It starts with an imbalance of microbes that protect and rebuild and maintain the structure versus microbes that destroy and diminish the structure, right? That is dysbiosis. And the 2015 publication in Frontiers of Immunology showed that a disruption of this barrier structure is a number one cause of mortality and morbidity worldwide. Because when your gut starts to look like the right-hand side of your screen, the leaky gut side, you get constant translocation of microbial, viral toxins and products, including, and of course, LPS, lipopolysaccharide, one of the most prevalent microbial toxins in the gut lining, into circulation, into the liver, into general circulation, causing loads and loads of chronic low-grade inflammation. Not only does it do that, it also puts your immune system into kind of a tailspin because your immune system is not getting all the right information from your microbiome on what to tolerate and what not to tolerate. So now your immune system starts attacking everything, right? This tends to be the general response. This is where all of these conditions, leptin resistance, chronic constipation, mood issues, depression, anxiety, even hypogonadism, which is low testosterone in men, chronic pain, of course, autoimmune issues, all of these issues can be traced back to a disruption in this ecosystem and in this structural element, right? And this can be affecting a few inches of your gut, or it could be affecting 20 feet of your gut, right? And how much of your gut looks like this on the right-hand side determines how severe the conditions are that you're dealing with, right? So this is really important to understand because it gives you an idea of where the root drivers of many of these conditions are coming from, right? It's coming from this dysfunctional structure right here. So let's break down then a few main ways in which some of this unhealthy gut microbiomes can contribute to the most common and chronic health problems. So to begin with, when we look at the hormone side of things, we know that hormone imbalances are affecting somewhere around 80% of adult women right now, right? It's a massive number. If you think about adult women who are in childbearing age and beyond, 80% of them are reporting some sort of condition that can be traced back to hormone imbalances, right? And the microbiome plays a huge role in regulating hormones within the body. So you take steroid hormones, for example, which is also your sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. Most of those hormones are regulated in part through the gut microbiome. Because take estrogen, for example, estrogen, as it's cycling through, as it's produced in your sex organs, are cycling through the body. They bind receptors all over. They're converted into different forms of estrogen. But then when your body is trying to get rid of estrogen in order to either recycle part of it or get rid of it so that you can make a new cycle of estrogen within depending on what phase of your cycle you're in, estrogen gets sent to the liver. The liver conjugates it, which means it masks it, it cloaks it, so it no longer looks like active estrogen. And then your liver dumps it into the gut. And your gut is supposed to metabolize and break that down and get rid of it. Now, there are microbes within your gut, within a constellation of microbes called estrobolome, that can deconjugate the estrogen, meaning it can remove that cloak and make it active estrogen again. And that active estrogen gets reabsorbed into your system. Now, there has to be a very intimate balance here in the function of estrobolome, because if you have too much estrobolome, you'll end up in estrogen dominance, which is the most common condition of hormonal imbalance in women, right? So what that's indicating is that most women actually have too much estrobolome and specific organisms within the estrobolome constellation. Now, as you're reaching perimenopause, you want to have adequate estrobolome because you want to maintain the right estrogen levels. But if you don't, if you lose a lot of diversity and you reduce estrobolome function, you can very quickly go into estrogen deficiencies. That presents a whole other set of problems, right? We also know that the endocrine system, which also then affects steroid and sex hormones, are also influenced heavily by the microbiome. Things like GLP-1, which everyone's been hearing about, ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, PYY, AMPK, which are all metabolic hormones that are really important for your gut to talk to your brain in terms of how to deal with the food that's coming in, when you should stop eating, when to release insulin, how much insulin to release, when to release the satiety hormone, which is the hunger hormone, when to activate AMPK, which tells all the cells in your body to burn fat. So all of these things are regulated by your microbiome, right? So metabolic disruptions can lead to sex hormone dysfunctions. Sex hormone dysfunctions lead to metabolic dysfunctions. Both of those are influenced heavily by what your microbiome looks like, right? So that's a very common issue. We also talk a lot about the gut-brain connection. We know that the enteric nervous system, which is a neurological system that covers your entire digestive tract, is the second highest area of nerve endings. So the density of nerve endings in the enteric nervous system is even higher than your spinal cord. So it's thought of course, as the other brain or the second brain. We know it's, of course, directly connected to your brain, to your primary brain, through the vagus nerve. Now, virtually every chronic neurological condition, whether it's Alzheimer's, depression, anxiety, MS, Parkinson's, and so on, they all have a component with the gut enteric nervous system and the brain, the central nervous system, right? We also know that things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, which is the most common reported gut issue, is not a primary gut issue, it's a gut-brain issue. It's a neurological issue between the enteric nervous system and the brain in the central nervous system. Anxiety, depression, they are gut-brain issues, right? This is why when you take a cohort of IBS patients and you look at the percentage of IBS patients that have confirmed anxiety, depression, it can be as high as 70%. Compared to less than 19% of non-IBS adults of the same age. So having IBS means you're almost 4 times more likely to have anxiety and depression. Why is that? Well, that's because it's the same mechanism. It's the same neuroinflammation that starts in the gut that can move up to the central nervous system. The inflammation can activate the HPA axis on a chronic basis, which means it's continuously putting you in fight or flight response. That same inflammation that activates the HPA axis is the type of inflammation that causes disruption in peristaltic movement in your gut. It either stops peristaltic movement, which means you have IBS-C, you're constipated all the time, or it's got overactive peristaltic movement, which means you have IBS-D, where your gut is constantly moving and it's moving too much. All of that will also, that dysbiosis will also lead to inflammation in the large bowel. That inflammation in the large bowel means you have a hard time absorbing water into your lining of your gut and nutrients, of course, but water is one of the primary things you absorb in the large bowel. And if you can't absorb the water effectively, then the water stays in stool and your stool is constantly loose, right? So all of these conditions, all the brain-related conditions that you see, and then lots of gut-related conditions are actually gut-brain conditions. And it all stems from neurological inflammation in the enteric nervous system, which is the nervous system that lines your gut. And a lot of that comes from leaky gut and elevated LPS, or having too much of the wrong microbes in your microbiome. We also have the gut immune system. I've always mentioned that the gut and the microbiome in particular are the eyes and ears of your immune system. Think about your immune system as an army that has all the equipment it needs to fight wars. So it has tanks and missiles and guns and all of this stuff, but it has no general, it has no plans. It doesn't know who the enemy is. Our body, our thymus, our glands, our bone marrow produces all of the tools that the immune system needs in order to defend the body, but it doesn't give the immune system information as to what to defend the body from. Now, the reason for that is because we are supposed to be adaptive to our environment, right? If you live in South Africa, like I saw, one of our attendees is in South Africa versus somebody that lives in Canada, you're going to have very different things that your body has to defend you against and tolerate. And those different things requires an adaptation of your immune system. The only way your immune system, which is produced in your thymus and your bone marrow, adapts to your changing environment is from signals from your microbiome. Because again, your microbes are much more adaptable to changes in environment and changes in conditions than your own cells are, right? This is one of the things I mentioned earlier. This is absolutely true for your immune system as well. It's very hard for your immune system to adapt to changes in the environment without communication and knowledge from the microbiome. And so your microbiome has to tell your immune system what to tolerate, what not to tolerate, what to attack, what not to attack, and so on. And the moment that communication gets disrupted, you start to develop immune dysregulations that can lead to simple things like allergies and asthma, which a lot of people experience, all the way to more complicated and more problematic things like autoimmune conditions, right? Where your cells are attacking itself. It's accidentally going after your own proteins, your own tissue. All of those have a huge implication in terms of the role of the microbiome in those pathologies. And then metabolism, right? So we know from studies from discordant twins are identical twins where one twin is obese and one twin is lean. These twins have exactly the same genetics. They were born in the same household. They grew up in the same household, so similar environments. And yet one twin is always obese and struggle with weight, and the other one is lean. So this discordant twins, has been a number of studies that have been done on discordant twins to think about what is affecting one twin's metabolism so they're lean and one twin's metabolism so they're always overweight. And they've started these studies by taking mice that have no microbiome, but these mice are genetically equal. They take the microbiome from the obese twin and put it in a set of those mice. And then they take the microbiome from the lean twin and put it in a set of those mice. And they feed all the mice the exact same diet. And of course, what they find is that the mice that have the obese twins microbiome always gain weight no matter what they feed it. And the mice that have the lean twins microbiome always stay lean no matter what they feed it. And when they reverse it, you see the opposite effect. They can take the mice that have the obese twins microbiome, hit it with antibiotics to knock down most of that microbiome, implant the lean twins microbiome, feed it the same food, and now it starts to lose weight, right? So this kind of study has now been done with humans and animals as well. So we know that the microbiome plays a very important role in your metabolic response. I'll elaborate just for a moment on a study that we did, that we published in 2017, the leaky gut study, one of the first ones that we did, where there was a component of it that was on metabolic health. And this was on the response of ghrelin, the hunger hormone, in these individuals. Now, keep in mind that these individuals were of normal body weight, right? So they were not overweight or obese individuals. They were young college kids of normal body weight. And what we saw is in the individuals with severe leaky gut, when we fed them a 2,000 calorie meal, their hunger hormone levels barely dropped, right? Which means that their gut is not communicating to their brain that, hey, we've got enough calories, stop producing the hunger hormone, start producing the satiety hormone, leptin, instead. So we saw that as a problem because that is how this process of leptin resistance starts to be created. And this is how people tend to overeat and overindulge, taking in too many calories, and eventually start gaining weight. And then as they do this more and more, they actually start to feed the microbes in their gut that harvest even more calories from the same food that's coming in. Right. So for an individual that's dealing with obesity all the time versus a lean individual, that obese individual can extract as many as 150 to 200 more calories from the same meal than the lean individual, right? So imagine if both of those individuals are eating the same thing, right, over 15 meals, which could be 5 days. The obese individual can extract almost a pound of fat's worth of calories more than the lean individual, right? So in this study, what we saw was that when people's guts were leaky and dysbiotic, their gut wasn't sending the appropriate signal to the brain to tell the brain to stop producing the hunger hormone despite getting adequate amount of calories in that single meal. In fact, it's way more than adequate. 2,000 calories for a single meal is a tremendous amount, right? Now, when we fixed their gut after 30 days and their gut became no longer leaky and their microbiomes improved and their chronic low-grade inflammation reduced quite a bit, we did the same test and we saw that after that 2,000 calorie meal, their hunger hormone levels dropped steadily, exactly how it should. And their satiety hormones, leptin, went up significantly as well, which means that we corrected the foundational metabolic issue that these individuals were suffering. Now, they were not overweight yet because they were young and they probably are very energetic and burned a lot of calories from all of the movement and so on. But those individuals left in that situation over the next 5 to 7 years, especially once they graduate college, they start working, they become more sedentary, they would start to gain a significant amount of weight, right? So that's where it starts. Now, the gut microbiome and detoxification. I mentioned earlier that your liver is, of course, our primary detox organ, right? So it's dealing with oxidation, reduction, hydrolysis. It's conjugating things. It has to cloak and mask toxins so that it can dump it into the gut to be excreted from the body. The liver is working overtime, right? This is why we have such a high prevalence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, because we live in a very toxigenic world. But when you have a resilient, diverse microbiome, your microbiome has the capability of biotransformation of things like xenobiotics and over 430 different environmental chemicals, even things like heavy metals that are things that normally your liver would have to deal with on its own. If you can dramatically reduce the toxicity that your liver experiences, it not only, of course, saves the liver and reduces the amount of work that the liver is doing, it also protects you from lots of other chronic conditions. Just two to mention, right? When your liver is undergoing high degrees of toxicity because you don't have a microbiome that's supporting the liver by biotransformation and neutralizing lots of the toxins that come in, your liver is working overtime. And when your liver works overtime, one of the things it does is it starts depositing fat on itself and producing a lot of free fatty acids. It's an attempt to try to protect itself as an organ, right? Now, this is why you get non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's called fatty liver disease because that is how your liver responds to elevated levels of toxicity, is it produces fatty acids. The problem is a lot of those fatty acids are triglycerides, and they end up as free fatty acids in your system. Now, elevated triglycerides is a very significant risk factor for lots of common conditions, especially cardiovascular disease, right? Cardiovascular disease is still the #1 killer of both men and women. And elevated triglycerides is one of the key risk factors. And a lot of that elevation of triglycerides come from overtaxing the liver and the liver producing too much triglycerides, right? So that's one disease condition in which you can significantly help the risk by improving the microbiome to take the toxigenic load off the liver. Another condition is a primary gut issue, SIBO, right? Which is, of course, near and dear to Shivan's heart and the heart of the SIBO SOS community.
Love it.
SIBO, right? We have to talk about SIBO at some point. SIBO is helped tremendously by adequate bile flow, right? And the reason is because bile is a strong antimicrobial. And when you eat food, your liver is producing a nice bile acid pool. It's sending it to the gallbladder. The gallbladder is releasing the bile, and this bile pool circulates throughout your digestive, throughout your small bowel, almost 15 times during a single meal, right? And the bile is doing a number of things. One, it's helping you absorb and bring in fat-soluble nutrients. It's helping conjugate and neutralize fat-soluble toxins, but it's also acting as an antimicrobial to prevent microbes in the small bowel from overgrowing when there's food in the system, right? This is how you can prevent the overgrowth of microbes from eating the food that's coming into the small bowel and overgrowing themselves. Bile acts as an antimicrobial. On top of that, bile also activates a receptor called a nuclear FX receptor in the end of your small intestine, where it gets reabsorbed back into the liver, causing your small intestinal cells to produce a lot of antimicrobials during the process of digestion. All that is happening in order to prevent microbes from overgrowing and trying to digest the food that's coming in, right? And if they start digesting the food that's coming in, what happens? You start producing gas, and then you get bloating, distension, and all of the issues that you start to see with SIBO. Now, when you have a lowered bile acid pool because your liver is under high degree of toxicity, you're not producing enough bile, you're not circulating enough bile, you're not cleaning up the bile adequately, and a reduction in the function of bile is a very significant risk for SIBO. This is why individuals who have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is a farther stage of liver dysfunction, they have a 4 times higher risk of having SIBO than individuals that have normal liver function, right? So liver health and digestive health, heart health, systemic health in general, all go along, but the liver is protected by the microbiome, right? And on the flip side, when you look at things like glyphosate and all these environmental chemicals that damage the microbiome, that damage indirectly causes damage to the liver as well. So how did we get here, right? A few of the real root causes. The standard American diet, which is highly processed foods. Not only is processed food, devoid of nutrient value and it's very high in calories, it also has lots of compounds in it that our microbiome is not used to dealing with. So things like, antimicrobials, antifungals, preservatives, and of course, pesticides, herbicides, and so on. High sugar, especially high oxidized bad fats. All of those things have a negative impact on the microbiome. Overuse of antibiotics. We know that they're not only overused in us, in humans, but of course, overused in agriculture as well. There's always, cases where you need antibiotics. They can absolutely save your life, but they are overused even by the CDC standards. Lack of exposure to beneficial bacteria. We know that starting from birth, being a C-section birth where 33% of births today are still C-section, all the way to not breastfeeding, all the way to over-sterilized environment and lack of being outside, being more indoor and sedentary. All of those things affect your exposure to microbes. And then, of course, the over-sterilization, like I mentioned, the sedentary lifestyle that most people seem to adopt, and then poor sleep and disrupted circadian rhythm. Your microbiome is a diurnal system, which means it does have a circadian rhythm, and there are microbes that are designed to proliferate at nighttime when you're not eating and you're resting. Those microbes are really important because they're housekeeping microbes that clean up the system. They produce things like BDNF, which repairs your brain. They reduce inflammation. They do all of these wonderful things. They upregulate, autophagy or mitophagy, which is fixing broken cells and cleaning up broken DNA and mitochondria. All of those things have to happen in a diurnal system, meaning a 24-hour clock. But if you're not sleeping and you're not resting and you don't have periods where you're not feeding the microbiome, those microbes don't become active. High stress environments, high stress exposure, that is one of the biggest drivers of dysbiosis within the system. Lots of bouts of stress act like little doses of antibiotics throughout the day, creating lots of dysbiosis, thereby making the system more prone to stress and the impact of stress, right? Now, what often doesn't work? So this is where the interventional idea on the microbiome comes in, right? So a lot of people go, well, okay, I can't tolerate these foods anymore, so I'm just going to eliminate them. That's an interventional approach, right? You're going in and you're cutting something out. You're intervening in a pathway where your system doesn't handle these types of foods, whatever it is, whether it's, plant-based foods or FODMAPs or fiber or even gluten, right? You don't handle it, I'm going to cut all of it out. I can't handle dairy anymore, I'm going to cut it out. And then what tends to happen is as you start cutting things out, it narrows the diversity of your diet. You start to lose tolerance of more and more things. You get to a point where you can only eat like 6 things. Everything else is going to have a very negative effect on your system. And it's not the problem with the food necessarily, it's your system's lack of resilience and lack of capability of dealing with it, right? So the interventional thinking is cut it out, right? This is allopathic thinking as well, right? You cut things out. Gallbladder is problematic, cut it out, right? Oh, you have appendicitis, let's cut it out. Let's remove things, that are normal, that humans have been consuming for thousands of years, right? So people remove entire categories of foods for long periods of time. That is not a mode of fixing the gut, right? So we have to start thinking beyond that. Now, you may narrow your diet temporarily. You may go keto temporarily. You might go carnivore temporarily. You might do that. And maybe there's some benefit to a temporary switch in your diet. But generally, in long term, what you want is diversity in your diet, right? Harsh killing protocols. There may be a phase in your therapeutics where your practitioner is using a killing protocol for a period of time. But I see far too often people are doing things like oregano oil. They've been on it for a year. They're doing things for too long with this notion that there's a bad bug in the system and I can take this thing and kill the bad bug and then the system gets better. That's just not how the microbiome works, right? It doesn't work that way with antibiotics either, right? So that's why even rifaximin therapy doesn't necessarily solve SIBO, because you can't just kill everything and then everything gets better. There is a lot more nuance to it, right? Because it's an ecosystem. So just using killing is an interventional approach. What we want to do is start influencing the microbiome into the right ecosystem the right way. Most probiotics and gut healing, supplements don't have studies behind them. So you don't really know what they're going to do in your gut. So of course, there are some probiotics and some prebiotics and all that are well studied, polyphenols, tributyrins, things like that, enzymes that can be very beneficial. But more often than not, people are using things and just kind of throwing things at the system to see what will work, right? So we want to get a lot smarter about what we use and why we use it from a supplemental perspective, all the while keeping in mind that we don't necessarily want to intervene. We want to influence the microbiome towards resilience and towards health. So healing the gut and optimizing the microbiome, we know can be challenging. One of the reasons is because the microbiome doesn't want to change, right? The microbes, let's say you have severe dysbiosis, right? And you've got now your microbiome is aligned in such a way that you've got high pathobionts, you've got leaky gut, they're producing toxins, they're not communicating with your immune system, you're suffering from all kinds of conditions as a result of that. Those microbes are doing well in that condition. They don't want to change, right? So you're not going to easily intervene and cause them to shift. As a result of it, you need more prolonged and comprehensive approach to start influencing and shifting that ecological change in the microbiome, because microbes who are doing well in the system are resistant to changing, right? This is why it has to be an ongoing practice. You can't do it for a week or 10 days or 14 days or 30 days and expect the system to shift. There has to be an ongoing momentum towards influencing the microbiome into a different structure, because microbes do not want to change if they are doing well, right? They will resist that change. And there's a ton of information out there, right? Which leads to all kinds of confusion. And people send me these clips and excerpts and all that all the time from other people that just don't make any sense, which I know are confusing the heck out of people, right? I just was sent a clip a few weeks ago from somebody talking about gut health and microbiome health, and what they said, what this teacher, if you will, was saying was, you want to avoid most probiotics because probiotics are designed to feed bacteria, and probiotics may feed bad bacteria as well as good bacteria. And as a result, you have to use this product, right? Whatever it was. It wasn't a probiotic product that they were promoting, of course. Now, right off the bat, that is completely wrong nonsense information because probiotics don't feed other bacteria. They're talking about prebiotics. They have a complete mishap of terms, right? But that kind of lack of accuracy and ignorance and a significant ignorance confuses people. And you get a lot of mismanaged information. And so we need to resolve that. We need to give you the real information in a very important and effective, congruent way so that you have the knowledge and you can start thinking about your health in a different way, right? And again, thinking about it in a way of what are the collective things we can do to influence the microbiome and thereby my overall health in a positive direction. Most probiotics and gut supplements aren't really backed by research, so you might have tried so many different things and they're just not doing anything for you, right? Or maybe they help for a little bit, but they're not really moving the needle because they don't have research behind them and not formulated based on science. And root causes are multifactorial, right? And they're often interrelated. And so you have to consider lots of different things when you're thinking about how do I create a foundational change in my system. And we don't consider things like exercise, sleep, stress, circadian rhythm, and all that as part of our healing process enough, right? Muscle is a very important thing to fix the gut, right? I've done some posts on this, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as we go along. But the release of myokines, which is a set of proteins that are released by your muscles when you contract your muscles and take them to failure, those myokines actually can seal up the lining of the gut and improve the diversity of your microbiome, right? So you wouldn't think that to help my IBS or help my anxiety, which is driven by dysfunctional microbiome, I should be lifting weights, right? That's people don't connect those dots more often. So we want to give people that kind of comprehensive knowledge. And there's never a single pill or quick fix. This is not overnight. It has to be a comprehensive approach, right? And again, the comprehensive approach has to be a collection of things that you do and decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis that influence the system towards resilience and health. So it's all about building this idea of resilience, right? What does a high microbiome, resilient microbiome look like? These to me are the 5 features of a high resilient microbiome. You have a high resistome, which means that there's high stability in the microbiome and not many things can disrupt that stability of the microbiome, which means you can be exposed to certain things. You can go out for drinks. You can have a cupcake once in a while. You can live a little bit and your microbiome is not going to change very significantly because you have a high resistome. Part of that having high resistome is having high diversity. We know that age-related degeneration of the diversity of the microbiome is a big driver of chronic disease risk, right? And diversity of the microbiome is a fantastic predictor of longevity, disease resilience, and reduction of chronic disease risk. So diversity is absolutely paramount to health and wellness. High functional redundancies, meaning you have lots of different groups of microbes that can do the same thing. You have lots of microbes that can produce short-chain fatty acids. You have lots of microbes that can break down oxalates. So if one set of microbes gets damaged, you don't lose that functionality. So having high functional redundancy is a very important part of a healthy microbiome. Having high levels of keystone species is critical as well. And then having high genomic diversity, because your microbiome affords you genomic capability. We only have 22,000 functional genes in our own chromosomes. The microbiome provides us over 2.5 million functional genes in our system, right? A lot of our genetic capability to exist as this high order creature known as a human being comes from the microbiome. So the more microbes you have, the more diversity you have, the more genetic capability you have, the more resilient you are, and the more you can adapt to changes in your environment, and the more resilient you are to things that can create a negative effect in your system, right? And this all also then drives changes in your system that starts to change disease pathology. Right. So this is really, really important to think about. And how do you do this? Right. And I've broken them down into really 5 pillars of things that we have to engage in No matter what your chronic condition is. It doesn't matter if you're dealing with eczema or you're dealing with anxiety. It doesn't matter whether you're dealing with an autoimmune condition or you're dealing with obesity, right? All of these conditions can be seemingly unrelated and affect the body in different ways. But if you're focusing on reversing those conditions and helping your system become resilient, you have to have these 5 things, these 5 pillars, as part of your day-to-day function, right? So number one, food, right? What we feed the microbiome has one of the most significant impacts on the microbiome. So nutrient-dense, diverse food, lots of phytonutrients, lots of soluble and insoluble fibers, prebiotics, fermented foods, lean meats. All of these things are greatly important to help most conditions. Stress management, right? Acute and chronic stress management is really, really critically important. Other lifestyle activities like exercise, weightlifting, socialization, sleep, circadian rhythm, having purpose, having community, all of those things are as important as your food and your stress management. And equally important is your exposure. So from natural birth and breastfeeding, those are the earliest exposures, to family contact, physical contact, minimizing, not only antibiotics, but of course, antimicrobials and pesticides and herbicides and preservatives and all that are coming into your system through food and drink, getting as much exposure to nature, to the dirt, having pets, being around animals, all of those things can be significantly beneficial to your system. And then finally, the right type of supplements can also be heavily influential on your microbiome and your overall health. So having research-backed, personalized need for supplementation and having the right approach to supplementation, not the interventional approach as much, but thinking about what are the kinds of supplements that I need that continue to influence my microbiome towards health, wellness, and resilience, right? So you have to have all these 5 pillars functioning in your day-to-day practice, and you have to be thinking about these things actively and making decisions towards each of these pillars every single day, right? And there's a lot within those pillars as well. So here's a little recap for you. The health of our gut and microbiome plays a huge role in virtually every chronic disease. This includes, of course, brain health, immune health, inflammation, metabolism, detox, skin health, and so on. Like we talked about, leaky gut and endotoxemia is what we call the ground zero of most health disorders. In fact, it's been labeled in meta-analysis studies as the #1 cause of mortality and morbidity worldwide, and it's driven by dysbiosis in the gut. The root causes are many, but they're all interrelated, and there's lots of different things you have to consider as part of your therapeutic regimen, not only to improve a certain condition, but become resilient, so you're resilient against further conditions down the road. And there are many challenges to healing, right? There's a lot of confusion out there. The microbiome is resistant to change. There's a lot of incorrect advice, lots of products that don't have research behind them, and so on. And so people get misdirected quite a bit. So we need to have the right knowledge to be empowered so you can make all the right choices. And it's really about resilience at the end of the day, because not only do you want to just feel better by abating symptomology, what you really want to do is make your system resilient so that you can live, right? So that you don't have to be worried about your health and your symptoms and your outcomes 90% of the day. You don't have to be uber picky about everything that you eat and every environment and condition you put yourself in. And you have to keep thinking about other risk factors that come along as you age. And the more resilient you are, the lower the risk is for other age-related chronic conditions. And by building this resilient microbiome, you can have more energy, improve digestion, you can balance your immune response, reduce inflammation, improve mood, hormones, metabolic health, all of those things come as a result of resilience. And the 5 pillars are really important to keep in mind. So food, exposure, lifestyle, stress, and supplementation, right? You have to have actions in each of those categories every single day in order to improve the system, or the system will simply not improve in a measurable enough manner. So can you identify with these challenges shared today? Shivan, do you want to take over from here?
I can. I mean, so many of us have stubborn gut-related symptoms that Kiran's been talking about, but also how many people can now feel like you're connecting the dot with, oh, maybe that brain fog is also connected to my gut. Like, so there, he's really expanded that vision for us, which I so appreciate. So the pain, autoimmunity, that skin, anxiety, reactivity to foods, chemicals, and then yes, stress, like whoever thought your microbiome was related to stress and how we handle it. Now we know. So we all also can get so overwhelmed by information, right? And who knows if it's accurate? That's why we go to Dr. Google and we go, huh? But then we go to Kiran and we go, yes. So there's relief in knowing that you're really working with an expert. So if you haven't been able to discover your root cause or whatever your unique health challenges are, it's okay. It's okay. Notice how he's really doing a holistic approach to the microbiome. It's a very kind of different approach than what we're usually hearing about. But this is that lock and key so that you get a global health. And by the way, put some love into the chat for Kiran, if you would. Some hearts. That was amazing, Kiran. So if you would love some direction, support, and help from Kiran to finally feel free, this is the big announcement. He has never done this before. He has an actual course, which I am so excited about. So you'll learn during 5 live, I don't know if it's ever going to be live again, but the first time it is, 90-minute training sessions with Kiran. And here they are. So pay attention to this. This is a red alert coming from the other room. So the first one is microbiome essentials, regulating your immunity, digestion, hormones, brain, mental health, and how to nurture its adaptability and resilience for lifelong wellness. So this is, again, foundational. So then the second module, and I'll explain how this works live with Q&As, stomach acid, I know there's some questions about that, bile, questions about that, enzymes, and how they work actually together to help you and when to use them, what kinds to use, and again, how to incorporate them into your lifestyle. Recipes, leaky gut and endotoxemia, how leaky gut can be resolved and how it is linked to, you heard him say, your body thinks it has sepsis, every chronic symptom, and the real root cause behind it, and the comprehensive approach to heal that condition. Then you're up. I love that he did this. He did an upper GI and a lower GI. Module 4 is the upper GI. Reflux, bloating, SIBO, tackling stomach acid, H. pylori, bile insufficiency. Learn how to restore digestive balance and say goodbye to those annoying symptoms. And then the lower GI, candida, dysbiosis, that irregular or imbalanced microbiome, inflammatory bowel conditions, and then how to manage them and implement advanced gut restoration. So this is really huge. So you're getting powerful tools. You're getting an assessment, a checklist, shopping list, recipes, an optimization checklist, a leaky gut repair guide, a symptom checklist, troubleshooting guide, SIBO and bile support guides, supplement guides, protocols that you can personalize, and of course, many other valuable tools. And Allie, thanks for putting the link in the chat. I was just about to do that. So here's the logistics. It's live. If I haven't mentioned that, we always love live. They are on Thursdays in October. Look at the dates, 10, 17, 24, November 1st. And then notice there is a different day of the week. It's Thursday, the 7th. And yes, there are quarterly Q&As. So that's going into 2025. So it's never going to be live again. Honestly, I know that. Unless something changes, the plan is to not make it live. If you cannot attend those live, then you will get the recordings, of course. So let's say you're on the 11th of October over the weekend. You watch what happened on the 10th, fine. You gather your questions, and then you can attend the live Q&As to get the support. The other thing is, before you change the slide, I want to just give you all an idea, a tip that I have that I use. It's in my book, and it's called a question journal. So as I'm going through my day, or life, right? I'm like, oh, you know what? I wonder if onions really are, messing me up. I'll write it down. I'll make my own observations. And I'm like, yep, onions mess me up. And then I want to ask Kiran, what should I do if onions mess me up? I'll then ask that in a Q&A. And then sometimes I find out the answers myself, right? Or I just got the answer on the 10th, watching the replay, whenever. box checked, and I move on. So I don't feel like I have to keep up and remember everything, all in that one shot. So that's just a question journal I have for you. So here's what it consists of: 5 live 90-minute training sessions, video recordings, downloadable audio recordings, the transcripts, 20 plus tools, guides, checklists, and more. It's usually $497. And yes, gorgeous, gorgeous Your Name and Lights bonus. And that is, this is being produced by Rebel Health and Michael over at Rebel Health. And he does such a beautiful job. You're getting those quarterly live Q&A sessions with Kiran, and you can interact with him that way live, and you will watch the recordings. Plus, we have bonuses for you. So here they come. This is from Jacqueline Downs, who is a genetic expert, and how your genetics impact your gut and microbiome. She's one of the speakers that I've talked to behind the scenes. I never have been able to coordinate having her come on to SIBO SOS, but she's on my radar. She's really brilliant. And then stress reduction and the nervous system regulation. And this is with Michael, who is that co-founder of Rebel Health, who is producing this course with Kiran. And then we have bonus number 3, love it. You know how I feel about biological dentistry, the oral microbiome deep dive with Dr. Mark Bernheim. And I was on his mailing list way back in the day. He's great. And then Dr. Carrie Bennett with light quantum biology and the microbiome. So those are the 4 bonuses that you're getting. And then you have the advanced personal training vault for free. So this is $197 value. That is that, we call it like that quick action bonus. That's just for the next 48 hours. So deep dive training on SIBO, gut microbiome and immune, endotoxemia, which is LPS, leaky gut, the microbiome's role in detoxification. Go, Adrienne. She just got it. And then so did Erin. Excellent. The gut-brain connection, new research, the leaky skin problem, the gut microbiome and autoimmune link, and then the original microbiome series webinar, which is 10 videos. So Michael at Rebel Health does a beautiful job. Okay. If you all know what my content's like, you're going to love Michael's. And if you like Michael's, you're going to love ours. That's the kind of, like, if I think of anybody else who's doing the kind of work that I do, I think of Rebel Health. So he always does a great job. Okay.
And one comment on this one, Shivan. So these talks right here that come as a bonus are talks I've done, which are PowerPoint lectures that I often do to professionals, to practitioners. And these are talks that have been done over the last 10 years, right? And Rebel Health has recorded them and collated them all together. And this is what they're providing as an early bird super bonus.
Right.
So these are like deep dives into all of these areas that can be great supplements to what you'll learn during the live trainings as well.
And so here's the recap. It's usually $497. That's not the price today. You're getting the 5 live trainings with Kiran. You're getting the ability to watch it on your own time, the usual transcripts, PDFs, and then extras, these tools, guides, checklists, recipes, food plans. And then here are those bonuses, the quarterly live Q&As with Kiran. Those are, I like it, priceless. Genetic impacts on the gut and microbiome with Jacqueline, the stress reduction with Michael, the oral microbiome with Dr. Breen, and then the light quantum biology and microbiome with Carrie Bennett. And then that early early bird super bonus is the $197 value of the 15 deep dive video trainings. Okay. You're not going to pay the $500, even $300. Go for it. It's $297. So you're saving over 66%. And this is a beautiful array of everything that you're getting. I do want to encourage you. They will be capping it at some point to take advantage of it before that they get to max capacity in this cohort. The link is on your screen, but it's also on the, hey, Anna, great to have you there. And then is it for the general public or is it for practitioners? And then the link is in the chat. And I have another announcement too. It's for everybody.
It's for everybody, right? So the live modules that we're doing, I'm going to go somewhat deep into it, deep enough where practitioners will gain enough knowledge on specific mechanisms and so on that are important to them. But because of the bonus part of it, all of those bonus trainings are practitioner focused bonus trainings, right? Because those we really deep dive in those. So if there's a practitioner on here right now, if they take advantage of that early bird special, they'll get all the deep dive bonus recordings that are very much practitioner focused. So you get both.
I also want to say I just came back from the Microbiome conference and Microbiome Labs conference, where Kiran was one of the keynote speakers and was really kind of the star of the show. And that's saying a lot because there were a lot of amazing speakers. Kiran, go ahead and go full screen with me for a sec.
Back to the normal. Stop sharing.
No, just let's do face to face for a minute because I want to show the page and everything, but I also want to see your pretty face. So I just want to mention that, like, I just came back from this conference where there were probably 400 practitioners, to your point. And Kiran, they were all there hanging on his every word. Okay. He was talking about this brand new research that I don't know anyone who is, maybe one other person that is in a hospital in a lab right now, who is on the precipice and also on the lead, riding the wave of all of this cutting edge information, knowledge, and research. So when you ask what are his credentials, he's a microbiologist, he's a researcher, he is a formulator, he's a world-renowned patent holder, he's an educator, and this is his specialty. And it is one of the reasons why people are getting more and more aware of the microbiome. Is fortunately there is other research going on, but I don't know of anyone who is educating more people every single year. How many days of the year do you travel, Kiran?
Oh, well, I was doing about 400,000 miles a year, so that's probably, at least 70%, almost 70% of the year I'm traveling. Yeah. So and I was speaking.
You're not in Hawaii, okay?
No.
60 conferences. Okay, there are 52 weeks in the year. He's at 60 conferences. Let's just put it in perspective. I don't think there's a payment plan, and $297 is the price, Joyce. So that's the price. You are getting a $197 bonus if you buy in the next 48 hours. So I wanted to show you this. I'm going to share my screen for a second. I'm very, very excited about this, and I'm going to do it right alongside with everybody else. So this is what it looks like when you click the link. He has a pretty picture, and then it takes you through some more information about the course. You're saving that $200, join the course. Who's it for? Yes, it's for practitioners. Yes, it's for, patients. Even if you're not like used to this level of learning, that's okay. You own it. You're going to be able to rewatch it over and over and over again. I'm going fast because you guys can read it for yourself. But this is the set of modules that are live. And I want to talk to you about the 4 Q&As. So it goes on and on. So you can decide, register now, and then this is where you would go to, click that, and then this is how you check out. Okay, so I just wanted to show that to you. And then I have the dates, hold on an email. Allie and I communicated before, and I was like, hey, when are the dates for the Q&A? Allie, looking up. Okay, here it is. So module 1, you saw the calendar. And by the way, if you can't make it live, it's okay, because you can watch the recordings. October 10th, October 17th, don't worry about writing it down. You're going to get all this. October 24th, November 1st. Notice that it's a different day. Thursday, November 7th is the 5th. And then there's a bonus live Q&A Thursday, November 21st. And then they're working on the additional Q&A dates into next year, maybe February. And so there you go. Wanted to get all that out. We will be sending the email with the link in it, although we'd love to have you do it now. And I have one other thing. For you. Okay, hold on. Yes, it will help you manage your IBSD, Rose. Share. Let me go here. So Kiran, hold on. Kiran has also been very generous to my community, as you can tell by the time we're spending today as well. And he and I have been doing conversations for literally years. By the way, if you can't register because we're breaking the internet, I understand, go into incognito and try that. But if you order, I'm going to say it's 421. So if you order by, let's say, I'm going to say 7 p.m. Eastern time, you will get an additional bonus, and here it is. You don't know about this, Kiran.
I love this. Awesome.
I know. There's something else great. Okay. You all don't understand here. Conversations with Microbiome Labs with Kiran Krishnan. Okay. Brain, you get these too. If you order by, what did I say? 7 tonight? Let's make it 8 tonight. So you guys have time. Gut brain access. This is going all the way back. Kiran and I have been having these conversations for literally years. Weight loss. New strains for sleep and mood. Support your kids in a way they'll actually eat healthy food with a pediatric microbiome. K2 beyond bone health. He actually got first started in bone health, K2 and D3. Spore-based probiotics, a user's guide. Helping yourself over the holidays. Prebiotics, probiotics. There's the D3, K2. Healing the gut lining. Oral health. Kiran, you and I have done a lot of great work.
Wow, I know, it's amazing.
Microbiome. 13 studies on megaspore probiotic with Kiran. The role of spore probiotics. Microbiome superpowers. When he and I met in person. The gut brain access, the root cause of SIBO, the skin brain sleep matrix, megaspore. That's in the house I don't even live in anymore. Microbiome breakthroughs.
Me neither.
Look at this. On and on and on. You're getting all of that if you do it by 8 p.m. tonight. So I just wanted to mention that to you.
Amazing.
We called, yes, they are Zoom. We called and gathered all of our work for the past several years. And it's all still cutting edge, and it's all incredibly informative. So that's also included for the 8 p.m. If you can't do it by 8 p.m. tonight, that's okay. You have 48 hours for the 197 value on that extra bonus. And then you're still getting lots of juicy things if you aren't able to do it in the next 48 hours. But registration does close on that first day, which is October 10th. Okay. Yes, I'm going to still do Q&As if Kiran has the energy. Are you okay?
I am. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right, here we go. Please put any Q&A in the Q&A box. I just had to take care of that business. Ooh, it's a lot. I sent you a private message, Kiran, about the 50, 60, 70 questions that we have. I don't know if you can see it in your chat.
Oh, no, I don't know where the private chat is.
Just don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Okay. You ready?
Thank you, Dorian. Yeah, Dorian's been helping people for years, and she's getting the course and getting even more information. So that's awesome.
Great. Awesome, Dorian. Okay, can you put megaspore in a coffee enema?
You can, absolutely. I think I wouldn't use that as the primary way you take it because you miss a lot of the benefits going through the small bowel, right? The small bowel is where you have a lot of the immune tissue, especially in the terminal end of the small bowel, and you want the interaction between the spores and the terminal end of the small bowel. So you can absolutely do it in the coffee enema, and I think there'll be some marginal benefits. One of the problems with the coffee enema, even one that you retain for a while, is it may not be enough time for the spores to kind of attach itself, to the lining, right? Most of it may flush back out, but there's no harm in it. You can absolutely do it.
And Darren, yes, you have lifetime access on the one platform. If it is expired, go to the incognito window. Going to Cindy. I've used your products for years and have 2 bad copies of FUT2 SNPs and do not get detectable acromantia, buffs, or acidophilus. 40 to 50 grams fiber, probiotics, fermented foods. I use your latest fecal test too. Nothing works. What else can I do? Naturally born too. Hey, Cindy. Now remember, this isn't medical advice and Kiran is not your doctor, but could you give us just some great advice, generally speaking, Kiran, on that?
Yeah, so with those types of gene SNPs, you do have a secretor problem, right? Which means you're not secreting mucin and the glycoproteins the same as other people do, which means it's harder to build that mucosa and it's harder to maintain that mucosal structure. I was just talking to a practitioner at the Microbiome keynote who I'd met last year who has the same issue. And my recommendation was on really focusing on oligosaccharides, prebiotics. So I know you consume fiber already, that was mentioned, but I don't know if you're using oligosaccharide prebiotics like fructooligosaccharides, galactooligosaccharides. Those seem to help her quite a bit. One of the first things she said to me, and she's a genetic specialist, that's what she does. When I saw her at the conference, she came running up to me and said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you alerted me to these oligosaccharides with my FUT gene mutation. This has helped tremendously. So if you don't use oligosaccharides, that's something that you should really look at and consider.
Melody's really dealing with something truly horrible. Her husband has just battled stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and classic liver cancer, and chemo destroyed his gut. Please help. Melody, we are wishing you, both of you and your whole family, all of the best. Kiran, what do you say for someone who has gone through such a brutal
Thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, when we talk about the microbiome as it relates to an issue like that, we're really talking about quality of life, right? So what can we do to improve quality of life? We don't have evidence that it can help the condition in any particular way, but one thing we do know is chemotherapy and the result, even the condition itself, does disrupt the digestive system quite a bit, and thereby disrupts the immune system. So it's a prebiotic probiotic combination that can help. One of the first clients that we had when we released Megaspore and then eventually Megapre was the oncology unit at Northwestern Hospital in Chicago. We have a naturopath there, Dr. Judy Phillip. I don't know if she's still there, but she started using this with her chemo patients because their guts were getting really disrupted from the treatment, right? And that has a significant quality of life impact. So improving the gut can improve other things, make them feel better, make food taste better, give them more energy, improve mood and things like that. So I would recommend the prebiotic and probiotic. And if he tolerates it well, then it's something you could use.
We are going to be sending out the replay tonight, so you can rewatch this tomorrow to enable us to make the decision on purchasing that gets us in time for one of the bonuses. So that would be your 48-hour bonus. Yes. If you want to do it by 8 tonight, you're getting an additional bonus. Oh, sorry. You have to send me your proof of purchase by tonight at 8. Sorry. And then everyone goes, okay, good, Shivan. Well, what's the email address? And I'm going to tell you. Because this is the one thing I forget to do. info@SIBO.com. Okay, you would send your proof of purchase tonight. That's by 8 p.m. tonight. Don't send it tomorrow, okay, please, because my team is really this is a heavy lift for the team. So just do it for night. Thank you. Okay, how do you repair microbiome after a course of IV broad spectrum antibiotics? So, Kiran, if you get antibiotics in IV, does it bypass the gut or does it still mess with the gut?
So that's the good news, right? So IV antibiotics actually have less impact on the gut than oral antibiotics do. They can still have some impact because you're going to end up with some of that antibiotic in the mucosal tissues, which of course your gut is covered with the mucosa, but it's actually less impactful than oral antibiotics. Now, one of the problems with IV antibiotics is the dose and the amount and the consistency, right? So oral antibiotics, when you take a little antibiotic pill, the dose is significantly less than what you normally get through an IV. And it clears the gut in about 2 or 3 hours. So it has a profound effect in that first couple hours, but then it clears the gut. IV can be a little bit more persistent. So the way you would repair the gut after that is no different than how you would for oral antibiotics. It would be a focus on the probiotics and prebiotics that can help. We published a study on this showing that when you take, for example, Megaspore and Restore Flora in combination with the Megapre, you could start to walk back a lot of the damage that the antibiotic has done in the gut and the gut microbiome. This was on an oral antibiotic. It wasn't an IV, but it works the same way. And then on your diet, you really want to dramatically increase fiber, right? Because one of the things that occurs once you take an antibiotic that damages the gut is you get a lot of pro-inflammatory immune responses in the lining of your gut. That's one of the things we saw in the trial that we did is you elevate inflammatory responses in the mucosa. So you need something that dampens inflammatory responses. One of those things is butyrate. So you want to increase butyrate production, and one of the ways you do that is by prebiotics and fiber, right? So you want to increase your fiber and prebiotic intake at least for 2 or 3 times longer than the course of antibiotics were. Let's say it was a 10-day course of antibiotics, so you want to have an increased amount of fiber and prebiotic intake for 30 days instead of which is 3 times longer than 10 days. So those are the basics, and then manage your stress as much as you can, and get outside. Get moving, get active, and try to be active in the natural environment.
Okay, here we go. People are asking me to do this. Okay. When you click the link, this is where you go, and this is what you would be registering for today for the course. Okay. As far as the bonus goes, if you order within 48 hours, this is really important. I know it's a lot. You would get that extra bonus of the, hold on, not only the live Q&As, you're also getting these other classes. But if you do it within the 48 hours, you also are getting the Kiran's Professional Training Vault access. Okay, so that's the kind of 48-hour thing. I'm trying to give you some paced out, support. And then if you do it by tonight at 8, just a little extra incentive, no pressure. Then you also get, hold on, you get this, which is basically my professional training sessions with Kiran over the past couple of years. And the D vitamins, the oral microbiome, the skin matrix, your SIBO, your what is megaspore biotic. So the multiple conversations that Kiran and I have had, all in one place, all easy to access. And you just play it in the background. We're going to be your new favorite podcast. So that's what you guys don't have to feel obligated to sit there and stare at the whole thing every time. You can just play it in the background, play it when you get in your car. And by the way, going to the Q&As, you don't here's reality. You don't actually have had to watch the modules first. Do I think you'll get more out of it if you do? Yes. Is it essential? Frankly, no. So, and that is Eastern time, guys. It's Eastern time. So it's kind of a no shame environment when you show up to the Q&As, just like, you're here. Awesome. Let's go. Okay. So this is not like high school when you get punished corner of the room if you haven't done your homework. This is about you getting resources to help. Okay. I hope that cleared that up. I did not mean to make it more confusing. There's going to be no way, unless we're here till midnight, that we get all these questions answered. So I do want to encourage you to sign up for the course, because then you'll get the additional.
Yeah, definitely save some of those questions for the live Q&A.
Remember
right?
that.
Because I think we're dedicating, if I'm not mistaken, 60 or maybe 90 minutes to the live Q&A when we do those quarterly live Q&As. So there'll be, and it's only Q&A, right? So there's no presentation, that part of it. So we'll be able to tackle a lot of questions at that time, and it's kind of an ask anything forum.
Right. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So somebody else wants the link. I'm going to put it back into the chat. There's the link. Okay. And then if you do order by 8 tonight, info@sibosos.com, please send us your proof of purchase. Do you record the live Q&A? Absolutely. That's the juicy bits.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course. I have mast cell and react to almost every food.
Mm-hmm.
My diet does not contain, now it says, no, my diet does not contain good nutrients, and I continue to lose weight. I'm not sure what that means, but you're losing weight and you're currently under 90 pounds. I'm so sorry, Kathy. What would you suggest as a first step to improve my nutrition and gain weight?
Mm-hmm. So that's the same, Kathy is the same individual with mast cell? Is that a connected thing?
I don't, Kathy, is that the same Kathy? No, I don't think so. Wait, stand by. Yeah, mast cell and underweight. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And so she's underweight and has poor nutrition because of the mast cell, which means you can't eat very many things. Your microbiome, your immune system keeps attacking everything, right? And so yes, so there is a, there's a painstaking process you can follow of trying to introduce small amounts of foods into your system while trying to modulate mast cell activation, right? So what you really want is to elevate something called Tregs, which are T regulatory cells. There is a category of probiotics called psychobiotics. In our case, it's ZenBiome is one of the products that we produce. It's psychobiotics. And then there's another version of it called ZenBiome Dual that has a strain in it called Bifidobacterium longum 35624. That's a gut-focused strain. What that strain has shown is it can dramatically increase T regulatory cells and reduce inflammatory pathways in the gut, right? Now, that becomes really important in order to start to build tolerance and reduce the activation of mast cells. So one of the strategies that you can look at is introducing small amounts of certain categories of foods that you may not tolerate well, and introducing it in the context of taking the ZenBiome dual, so that in the presence of that compound, the food compound that may activate your immune system, you've got something in there that negates the immune system activation. So therefore, you can combat that unfavorable immune response. Does that make sense? So it may be a painstaking process of, let's say you can't stand eggs anymore. You get a small amount of eggs, you consume it, you take it with your ZenBiome dual, and hopefully that kind of small exposure while modulating the immune response can end up building or rebuilding the tolerance, right? So there's a number of those kind of strategies you can try to use.
Allie, can you reach out to Michael? Because we're having some site issues, but Michael's in.
I
Okay.
am.
Okay, he's in Italy, so he's in another time zone, to say the least.
Or Marianne often can help with that too, right?
Who can?
Yeah,
Marianne?
I'm trying to get a hold of both of them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on it. Refresh and try again. That worked for Rachel. Okay. And you can do it later and you have to wait, but yes, doing it now is a great idea. Okay. Let's see here. Blazo or Blazo. Can we take an antimicrobial like berberine, oregano along with prebiotics? Or shall we have our antimicrobial cure first for a month at last, then followed by prebiotics and finally long-term probiotics? And are you going to be going over like the order in the course?
We will. We'll go through that kind of order and that kind of thinking quite a bit in the course. But to give you a quick answer now, keep in mind that berberine and oregano are not the same kind of antimicrobial. In fact, berberine has great studies on improving the diversity of the microbiome rather than acting as an antimicrobial, because berberine does so many things in the body, right? I take berberine, for example, fairly regularly for metabolic health, for blood sugar control, improving healthy cholesterol, and so on, and improving the diversity in your microbiome. Berberine's has been shown to be able to do that. Oregano is different. Oregano is a much more potent antimicrobial that can kill lots of stuff. So they're not at all the same. You can take berberine on a regular basis to improve the microbiome. Actually, you would use oregano more as an interventional approach to try to kill something like you would an antimicrobial. Now, this notion of let's kill stuff, have a killing phase, and then rebuild doesn't actually work that well. And the reason for that is you don't like kill bad things and then the microbiome just stays like that and then you start rebuilding, right? These are microbes. They come back within hours. So you can't it's not like in the garden where you can go and pluck all the weeds and then you just have soil and then you start slowly planting new plants. That's not how the microbiome works, even though we use garden analogies a lot. When you kill something, even with a broad spectrum antibiotic, within 3 or 4 hours, the microbes start to grow back and they grow back in different proportions. So if you're going to do any killing, you want to do rebuilding at the same time, right? I would do, if you're taking oregano, for example, and it seems to help you, use the oregano and then a few hours later use a probiotic and prebiotic to try to effectuate what comes back and at what rate. And we'll go into a lot more detail in the course than that, but that should give you an idea. And keep in mind that berberine is not the same as other antimicrobials.
And also, how much are you doing? Like, are you doing the 5 gram or 3 to 5 gram that's often suggested for SIBO treatment? Like, that's a lot. So, or are you doing like 1,000 milligrams a day? Like, that's a big thing too.
Yeah.
Can you treat a mom breastfeeding when imbalances are there? Hi, Adrian.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're treating, right? So if you're just trying to help the gut, you're trying to improve diversity, you're taking polyphenols, enzymes, immunoglobulins, probiotics, prebiotics, those are all perfectly fine. Keep in mind that part of breastfeeding is you're delivering healthy microbes to the child. And those healthy microbes that are found in the mammary glands are coming from the gut. So the healthier your gut microbiome is, the more beneficial microbes are that you're you're delivering to the child. And of course, prebiotics are a big part of mom's mother's milk, and that requires a healthy gut as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, hang in there, Nicole, with refreshing the browser and stuff. It's so much fun to have these things happen, but there's like a lot of traffic to the site right now. This is a little controversial because a lot of what I'm about to ask, because a lot of people have a lot of emotional investment in the following. Are you ready? How does alcohol consumption damage the microbiome?
Yeah. See, alcohol to me is one of those things that falls into that 80-20 rule. Okay, the alcohol itself can have a negative effect on the microbiome, right? But keep in mind, you absorb the alcohol fairly quickly, and then your body starts trying to metabolize it. What does impact the microbiome even more than the alcohol, arguably, is the aldehydes that are produced as a result of metabolizing the alcohol. Now, a healthy microbiome, there's also evidence that a healthy microbiome can help you metabolize alcohol better. And maybe one of the reasons why some people get hangovers and others don't, right? There's a resilience factor in there as well. But taking alcohol is not the same as like taking an antibiotic, which a lot of people have a misconception. Alcohol is toxin. It's a poison to you in many different ways. So it's not great, but I think you should be able to have a drink. Like I follow an 80-20 rule myself, and part of the reason I allow myself to follow an 80-20 rule is because I'm constantly working on the resilience of my gut microbiome. If you drink every single day, that is absolutely a problem, right? But if you're a social drinker and you drink once on a weekend, if you drink, every once in a while when you get together with friends, perfectly fine. And nobody at our age is trying to overdo it anyway. It's not like back in college where you're doing shots after shots and so on. When I drink, I'm sipping on nice high-end tequila. I'm sipping on high-end whiskey.
Sorry.
Right?
Lord, I drank
so
for
on.
enough of all of us.
Right. Well, and is Gators Florida State?
No, it's the other one.
Oh, University of Florida.
University
Okay.
of Florida.
I was going to say, because my business partner, my co-founder from Microbiome Labs, Tom, he has a tequila at Florida State, which is called Cambio. So it's a very nice high-end tequila. So I would say, listen, with alcohol, if you want to cut it out of your system, absolutely fine. That's a great thing. But if you're a social drinker, shouldn't have to feel too stressed about it. If you're drinking once in a while, just work on the resilience of your microbiome and it negates a lot of the problems. I also use a product called Cheers, which is a product you can buy online. And it has a couple of components in it that reduces the formation of those aldehydes that actually have higher toxigenic effect in your body than the alcohol itself. That helps a lot as well, right? So you can mitigate some of this, and then of course stay hydrated and eat a good diet while you're drinking. Try to avoid all the fried foods and things like that people want when they go out drinking, because that all just compounds on it and makes it worse.
So I did because my next summit is the science and wisdom of menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And I did just have an interview with a doctor who was talking about how the risk for breast cancer goes up like 28% or some high number if you drink every day. So just keep that in mind. It was called Cheers, Cynthia.
Cheers. Okay. Yeah. And I don't recommend drinking every day at all. That used to be kind of an old tale of having, a couple glasses of wine a day is fine.
Myth.
Yeah. I probably have, when I'm out socially, I'll probably have 2 drinks, sometimes 3. But again, I focus on just high-end spirits with ice, and sip it throughout the night. But that's probably once a month, I would say, at best. And friends of mine that I have that have a drink every day when they come home from work, I'm always like, you got to stop doing that. You got to find another way to stoke the dopamine versus that, right? Yeah. And they do that because it helps with the dopamine and relaxing and all that, but there's other ways of helping with that.
Like a mild walk. I mean, we don't need to get into that, but just quickly, so I went to the University of Florida. I was a sorority girl and got a marketing degree, got my business degree. It's a good school. I would not drink during the week and I would drink on the weekends.
Mhm.
Graduated, was by myself in my apartment, my cute little apartment on a Friday night. I reached in to have a Bartles and James. Have I told you the story, Kiran?
Mm-mm.
So Bartle and James, for those of you who are too young, what are you doing here? No, it's like a wine cooler in a beer bottle, basically.
Uh-huh.
So this was like a very girly drink. So I reached in. Now my grandfathers were alcoholics, and I heard like a voice, an intuition, and it was, hey, is this more than a habit? Because like, why would I be drinking by myself on a Friday night? And I stopped my hand from reaching to that bottle and said, I wonder how long I can go without drinking. I've never had a sip of alcohol since.
Wow,
So,
really?
I
That's
know not
amazing.
everyone can do that, but it was a habit. There's no doubt about it. I had to use willpower, but I just realized it was hurting me more than it was helping me, to say the least. And I've been like, I would not want to think about what my health would be like if I had continued to drink. So everyone's different. We all have our reasons. Don't drink every day, to say the least. Okay. Can you explain the connection to candida overgrowth and heavy metal toxicity as a biofilm issue? Is it a biofilm issue as well? Almost everything's a biofilm.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it can end up being part of the biofilm, but it's not a biofilm driving the condition, right? So, candida, keep in mind that everybody has candida in their system. We all do, and right now, if you really do PCR testing on your sputum in your nose or your lungs or your gut, you're going to find candida, and we can have upwards of 200 different species of candida. So it's part of the commensal flora, but it's an indicator of dysfunction because it's an opportunistic grower. So when your system is dysfunctional, you can start to get an overgrowth of candida. So why would heavy metals then create that issue? Well, heavy metals are pro-oxidants, right? They cause a lot of problems in the system, but they create a lot of oxidative stress. That oxidative stress can damage microbes and create dysfunction in your immune system. So your immune system is no longer functioning the way it should function, and heavy metals can actually kill microbes. And so when your microbes are compromised and your immune system is compromised, that is the perfect opportunity for candida to overgrow, right? Just like taking an antibiotic. When it hurts your bacteria, it hurts your immune system, candida will overgrow. So it's an opportunistic grower. It's not the primary problem itself, and you don't have to necessarily think about biofilm busting and all these really stringent interventions again to go after the candida. What you really have to do is understand what is the base dysfunction that's allowing this opportunistic organism to overgrow. You have to go after that base dysfunction that stops the opportunistic overgrowth.
Okay, you guys, we're never going to get to all of the questions. This just tells me you need the course. One of the biggest things that I do for the world is I help people have conversations that are not happening in doctors' offices. Am I pro doctor and practitioner? Yes, I am. I am pro when they keep up with the research, which is basically impossible. Okay. So if they're making gallant efforts and you're walking in with studies and they're working with you, they're some of my favorite people on the planet. Okay. For people who say they don't believe in the microbiome, like it's a religion or something like that, like, I don't have time for that. But this is the set of conversations you need to be having with your family, with yourself. You need to be sharing this information. Teach what you've learned. Please, we have to change the planet. I am engaging you. I'm inviting you. The call to action is to be on this mission with us. You all, I can tell. I've been there. I am with you all. You all have some serious scenarios, and there are often things that can be addressed with microbiome support. I mean, like really, even if you don't have a label of what's wrong with you, but you don't feel great, or you just want longevity, you want lifespan, health span, hello, there's a difference, then you need to be working on your microbiome. It's just, this is what is emerging. Thank goodness we have tools and we have Kiran, etc. So please, please, please seriously consider this course as a lifestyle. I mean, you'd spend $297 on a night at a spa, right? we spend more. What am I talking about? So I just really want to, come on, like, reality check.
Cheap spa.
I just, yeah, cheap spa. I just really hope that you'll seriously consider it if you can. Okay, Shivan, you just said we need the course, but the webpage won't let us buy it. If you can help us, I would repeatedly try. Darren, I know, we know. And so we're going to send you a link. They're literally in Italy right now, sleeping probably. And then we do have one of the team members, I think, working on it. So Allie has put the hello at Rebel Health Tribe. If you email in the chat, if you cannot buy it right now. Oh, hello.
It looks like it's back up and working. If everyone
Okay.
tried it, it's working for me. We have our tech team on the back end. So try it again. I'll drop the link again.
Right, thank you.
Well, hello, Kitty.
Petunia says hello, everybody. Petunia just had a nap with her red light upstairs. Okay. We're going to leave in about 8 minutes. Okay. So just wanted to give you fair warning. There's no way we can answer your questions at all of them. But we love you and we want you to know we really support you in this mission and we get it. So, okay. Does the course address heavy metal, mold, Lyme, and viral load causing leaky gut? It does address how to deal with leaky gut.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll talk about causes and we'll talk about how those causes lead to the condition and all that. But most importantly, what we want to do at the end of the day with this course is give you a good understanding of how your system works, right? Because when you know how it works, it becomes easier for you to make the judgments on a day-to-day basis on what's good for you, what's not good for you. And then we want to also give you a lot of practical things that you can do in order to improve your system or do what I was saying about influencing it towards health and resilience, right? Because again, we can't just do intervening things. We can't just keep throwing one intervention at it versus over another. We need to keep pushing the system towards the right balance. And when you do that, you'll have a resilient system and then lots of other issues will start to go away. So it's really about empowering people with this information.
Okay. Here, if you're having troubles, thank you for that. Yeah, there's the email address for their customer service. What do you think? Should someone do a parasite cleanse prior to addressing the microbiome? Hey, Megan.
I think number one, if you're going to do a parasite cleanse, you have to be very sure you have parasites, right? One of the things that I always get a little bit, kind of nervous about is all of these cleanses that people want to do, because some of them can be quite harsh. And if you don't know that you absolutely need it, then you could be doing more harm than good. So, have you done a parasitology test, right? In that you can get from a regular doctor from many, many labs around, and they're very cheap. Your insurance will probably cover it. You want to do a parasitology test, right? So if you identified that, yes, I do have parasites, then there are prescription medications that can help, and you might do a cleanse as well. But I wouldn't do it without confirmation that you have parasites. What you want to be careful of is this notion that, some of your problems may be due to parasites based on what you hear. And then you go, well, it's got to be parasites. I'm going to try to kill the parasites. You don't know that you have parasites, right? So you don't want to do anything that is interventionally, again, that's an intervention, without knowing that intervention is needed necessarily, right? So, and these are not harmless things, right? If you're doing a parasite cleanse, if you're using antimicrobials, they do have an impact. They do have consequences. They can help if you really need it. But if you presume you need it and use it, it can actually do more harm.
Okay. Debbie, this is a great way to wrap this up. This makes me crazy. Okay. Other specialists say probiotics don't really stay in the gut more than 2 weeks and then can't be found. Is this true? Hold on, before you answer, Kiran, just remember, Debbie, and this is great. I'm glad you brought this up. We never are afraid of any, questions. Your microbiome is ever changing, like every single second, and can absolutely change, like hourly. So we don't go out to the yard and pull up the dirty carrot or the potato like our foremothers and forefathers did. So just keep that in mind. That's why I'm going to be taking probiotics for the rest of my life. And go ahead, Kiran.
Yeah. So, and it's right. So probiotics generally are going to be transient, right?
Great word.
Now, transient doesn't mean they don't colonize. So this is where there's misnomers in this. There's the idea that, oh, colonization is permanent. It's not. Colonization just means the bacteria settles in a place and can start to form colonies. And when they form colonies, then they're starting to do their work and do their function. But they can always then uproot those colonies and leave, right? And microbes do this. They're transient in most cases. So it's true that the vast majority of probiotics are transient. They move through the system. In fact, many of them move immediately through the system, not even 2 weeks, right? The moment you take them, about 8 hours later, all of them are out in the toilet. And that's not necessarily doing much for you. But spores, for example, or even biflongum to a certain degree, or reuteri can go into the system. It can stay for a period of time, but they do transit out. That is a normal relationship we have with outside bacteria, right? Remember, we're born with a set of microbes. We get them from mom. We get them from close interaction with mom and dad. We get them through nursing and breastfeeding and all of that stuff. And then for the rest of your life, you're encountering microbes in the outside world. The vast majority of microbes that you encounter in the outside world will either die through the gastric system because your gastric system is acting as a barrier to microbes, or the ones that make it through may go in and conduct a function for a period of time, but they are designed to leave, right? So they don't stay there for not, at least not permanently. Now, it is important that they have an effect on the rest of your microbiome in order to be an effective probiotic. So this is where, like, Akkermansia, for example, as a probiotic doesn't quite make sense because it can't colonize. It doesn't necessarily stay within the system, even for a few days. It immediately leaves, but it also hasn't been shown to increase your endogenous Akkermansia in any way, right? So that's, those are the arguable parts of, is that a useful probiotic? It's just moving through the system. It's not really doing much of anything. Maybe there's some metabolic change to the presence of this of the probiotic, but maybe that's a change that only occurs for about an hour, and then the probiotic's gone, and there's no other effect to it, right? So we'll dive deeper into a lot of that on the course when you start thinking about probiotics. But keep in mind that yes, the vast majority of probiotics are transient, but some of them will colonize and will stay in there for a period of time and actually conduct functions that change your microbiome in a favorable way.
Okay. All right. We are out of time. I love you all so much. Thank you so much. Let's throw some love into the chat for Kiran. That was amazing.
Thank you, everybody. It's like kind of a culmination of a professional dream come true for me, because, I found over the years that I have basically one talent, and that's taking complicated information and making it understandable, right? I can't do a whole lot and anything else. And so teaching became a real passion of mine, because I'm also very focused on empowering people with knowledge, whether it's people in my home or community or friends, or in groups like this, or practitioners, right? Which I've done then now for a decade or more. So being able to do this in a course and putting it all together in one place is really amazing. So thank you, Shivan, for making this accessible to your audience, and thank you for everybody that jumped on here. I mean, I think we had over 300 people at one point. So it's super exciting to see that people are very eager to learn this information and empower themselves.
We need it. We really, really need it. And it's great because you're going to have the long-term access, international, no problem. We really appreciate your wisdom and your expertise, Kiran, and long time coming. So I'm super, super excited about it. Okay. And Allie said that the link is working. Save the link if you want your 8 p.m. Eastern time bonuses. Email info@SIBO.SOS with proof of purchase. Dorian saying, Kiran hooked me on gut health with his support to the autos and kickstarted my education in this area. Anyway, awesome. Glad you're still here and going strong. Thanks, Kiran. I'm going to hang out for a few minutes, make sure everyone gets the help they need, and I will talk to you later. Oh,
thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kiran. Bye. Woo! I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks if you're on the recording and you've made it this far, God bless you. And we appreciate you, and you are hardcore, and we love you for it. And I want to applaud you for your self-care and for your commitment to ongoing learning. So thank you.